Yo, crew, you have arrived at Next Level Radio number 58. We're cruising right along, dropping knowledge bombs along the way, and providing you, the business owner, the strength coach, the investor, the father, the mother, the grandparent, the best knowledge that we have at our hands, bringing them to you. Today is no different. The last few weeks, we have been able to get some pretty out-of-this-world guests that are well out of my league, people that have accomplished much, that have done amazing things in this world, and that's why we have them on Next Level Radio. And today is something that we talked about. We've talked about in the past. We've had podcasts outlining it. We've had posts. We've had blogs. We've had everything you could think of talking about this topic, and today we are going to deep dive, giving you everything you need to know. If you have not been sold on this topic yet, I give up. I present this information because I truly believe in it, and I think that it can improve your life, improve your quality of life. And so, tying into that, ladies and gentlemen, I talk about this briefly every podcast. I've been sponsored by Nutridyne, and I've been a part of Nutridyne for almost, going on 6 years now. So let's call it 5, coming up on 6. And it's a company unlike any other. I only hold a few. I hold Standard Process, I hold Thorne, and I hold Nutridyne on the same platter. And these guys are trying to absolutely destroy the rest of the supplement industry because everybody else is trying to look at their bottom line and getting you a product that quite possibly couldn't even be what you're looking for. Nutridyne, Thorne, Standard Process have been doing this for a long time, especially Nutridyne and especially Standard Process. Thorne is a newer, up-and-coming company in that sector. However, these guys look at optimizing human health, addressing the underlying issues of disease, increasing performance, things that you, the listeners, want, that you can benefit from. And I tell people, there's 2 ways. Either you come let me train you one-on-one, or you listen to the podcast. Listening to the podcast is a lot cheaper. I can tell you that right now. So listeners of the podcast or all my clients, you guys get 20% off. That's as much as we can get, and that is a very great price for anything that you can think of. You're going to be hard-pressed to go find Nature Valley stuff at a similar cost because I'm giving you that discount and we are giving you a product that actually works, giving you the right ingredients so that you can achieve what you're trying to achieve. And so Nutridyne can help support that, and it's going to be probably a podcast sponsor till the end of time. And since I've been taking Nutridyne for almost 6 years, I'm probably not going to die until I'm like 127. So you guys got a shit ton of years of listening to me to bullshit you until you're blue in the face. So Nutridyne, 20% off. Check out the link in my bio. I've had almost hundreds. I'm coming up on hundreds of people that have messaged me saying, hey, let's get set up. Bing, bada, boom, you're done. And then you actually have a regimen that I'm not throwing just 10 things at the wall and seeing what sticks. I'm giving you 2, 3 at the max of exactly what you need to accomplish your goals. So outside of that, today we had some posts talking about it. My boys over at Power Athlete had a podcast about it a few weeks ago. However, this is a deep dive into the most studied, one of the most effective and the safest supplements on the block, creatine, more specifically creatine monohydrate. And I want to talk about this because we've done supplement podcasts where it goes over, what do you need to take? What do I take? What do you need to take for these instances? And then go from there. Here today, we are going to the 1,000-foot view. Prior, we were at that 30,000-foot view. We're going deep and heavy into creatine today, giving you everything you need to know. I have to do things just like this, giving deep dives, going really hot and heavy into these topics because a lot of these topics have had a bad rap due to research and anecdotal studies and stories and things that give things a black eye. And I want to set the record straight. And so many people quote this when they talk to me. I used to quote this before I was a creatine taker. It's almost like you're a druggie. Like, yeah, bro, I've taken creatine straight for 12 years. Are you cycling off of it? That's like John Wellborn talked about it. He's like, cycling off of creatine is like cycling off of red meat. Like, bro, I only eat red meat 6 weeks in a row, and then I got to take a little break. Shut up. You don't need to cycle off creatine. The research doesn't show you need to cycle off creatine if you have adequate water, food, and sleep. So a lot of people state that in the early 2000s, this is true. I don't know the exact number of how many people died, but in the early 2000s, there was some football players in Texas having a heat wave starting two-a-days, probably boozing, getting buck wild, getting Western with all their boys, and they had creatine, elevated creatine in their system. Well, one of these kids ended up passing away due to a heat stroke, and they tried to connect creatine to that, and so then research started diving into creatine, showing problems with internal organs. And now, 2020, even 5 years ago, creatine has been shown to be a very effective performance enhancer, okay? And as you're going to see, creatine has a foothold in many things outside of performance, many things outside of athletics. And so it's really cool to see how the research does due diligence and comes around and shows you the truth in the end. And so we're going to give you everything that I've got. I did a lot of research diving into this, so let's go in hot and heavy. Let's just get into it. So in the past, we've talked about creatine, we've talked about supplementation and third-party testing and efficacy of all these supplements. And so we're going to kibosh all that and just get into what is creatine. So first and foremost, 95% of our creatine is going to be found in our skeletal muscle, okay? A lot of different places are going to say about the other 5% could be in the brain, the liver, a bunch of different places, but 95% of that creatine is going to be found in our skeletal tissue. From there, when we intake creatine, we can intake that as a supplement, okay, powders, capsules, or we can intake it through red meats. Increasing our meat consumption can help raise our serum creatine levels. However, it is shown, and I will talk about this as we get into performance, which is at the end, but it is shown that actually taking a supplemental form of creatine can help raise your serum or total creatine load. So it's very important, even though we eat a lot of red meats, to supplement with either a powder or a capsule of some sort so that we can get that benefit from the creatine. And so taking our creatine, as we take our creatine, what does it do? And I like giving this analogy of a battery, okay? Our body and our muscle stores are this battery, and our battery runs off ATP, the breakdown of ATP into ADP. So as our battery is getting full, we haven't worked out yet today. We got a full battery. We're hitting on all cylinders. The bats are recharged, okay? From there, when we intake our creatine, we increase our serum creatine levels. We now have a bigger starting point. So we have a bigger battery. So think that you can increase those phosphocreatine stores by intaking the creatine through supplementation. And so as we intake that creatine, it assists in producing more lithium, or ATP. So it's going to help increase that ATP, which causes us, once we break it down through high-intensity bouts of exercise into ADP, we can now have a bigger store of energy to accomplish our tasks, okay? Creatine in itself is not a magic drug. It just gives us the ability to do more work. So you think about steroids, and people think that the actual compound of steroids itself allows us to do more, or it actually builds the muscle for us. People on steroids still work really, really hard. And so when we take a anabolic steroid, it allows our body to recover quicker, allowing us to do more work, recover faster, so that we can do more work again. So this is what creatine does, is it increases our stores. And so you could also think about it as overhydrating the muscle. And this was also taken out of context in the early 2000s because people were thinking that it was retaining water and doing a lot of this stuff. It doesn't per se do that. So I don't like the overhydrating the muscle as much. Just think that you're having more energy to disperse in high bouts of exercise. So who is creatine most effective for? And it's actually been shown that a lot of aerobic sports, your Ironmans, your longtime cyclers, your distance runners, your 1600, 3200 runners can benefit from creatine. However, a lot of the research is looking at high intensity bouts of exercise, football, wrestling, tennis, soccer, things such of that nature that it takes explosive bouts of exercise, basketball, that then you can recover, recharge those bats, as Dane Dooley would say, and then go again. So this allows us the ability to increase our total work for our volume and our intensity. So now we can have increased volume. We can have increased intensity, allowing us to recharge the bats, recover quicker, and then we can go forth. So creatine as a whole is a very safe and effective thing to take. And it, like I have talked about in the past, it has caught a bad rap. But some of the things in the performance side, we will dive strictly into. I'll bring up some studies and data here. But so this allows our cells to increase cellular hydration. We're able to have better hydration within our cells, causing more energy. Also, it's been shown to increase anabolic hormones or secrete more anabolic hormones. This is not when it is a proven fact through the data, I will say this does X. This is not a very researched statement that it increases our anabolic hormones, but it allows us to do more work, which causes us to have more anabolic hormones. So there's a caveat there. And so when we're taking creatine, and I would have to ask Ben Skutnik and some of the guys much smarter than myself, but in the past they talked about a loading phase of creatine, and now you're hearing in the more recent research that the loading phase is not something you have to do. However, I've always taught it as a loading phase, and I've actually started going away from it because I haven't seen a massive benefit outweighing the contrary. So when we're taking creatine, they say to take a loading phase of upwards of a week of 5 grams. And most of your monohydrates you take, that it's going to be anywhere from 1 to 4 capsules. Okay. And so you take your 5 grams for a week, and then you drop down to 3 to 5 grams. So you can still just stay at that 5 grams. It's going to depend on body weight. The creatine I take, crealkaline creatine, pH corrected creatine, so that we get the hydration, but we don't get the bloat. It's still a monohydrate, but you're just taking a consistent 5 grams of creatine. And I want to talk about this first. And I have taken creatine for 12 years straight. Again, you don't cycle off of frickin' red meat. So why the hell would you cycle off of creatine if everything else is in check? And so I've taken it for 12 years straight, and it's been a miracle worker for my performance. And it's something that if I don't have, it's not good. I can obviously still work out. I worked out today right before this without having any creatine, but it's something that I stay very, very consistent with and will for the rest of my life, because you'll see the research as we progress down. So again, creatine, as it enters the system, increases our phosphocreatine stores, increases our ability to do more work, which then increases our anabolic hormones, but it allows us to have more ATP so that we can have more ADP as we progress down our energy our energy systems. So it increases that stores of the battery. And now, this is going to be like the shortest statement I've ever made, but what's the best creatine to take? And there's a few different types of creatine. Almost all of the research leads back to creatine monohydrate. So I'm going to preface this entire podcast that all this research is back to creatine monohydrate, and that is exactly what I prescribe to my athletes. When I'm at the university, Ben Skutnick, who's at Louisville, a lot of my buddies that are at Division I AA schools, as a strength and conditioning coach at the university, I can't prescribe my athletes supplementation. However, through my gym, if they hire me as a coach outside of the four walls of the university, I can now get them on a prescribed regimen as they're playing college football, but separate of that. So creatine monohydrate is the quick and easy answer. And so now I would like to get into the very first article of data here. And I talk about this data set because it's very close to my heart. It's close to my life, and it's something that I've had to deal with, and it's creatine supplementation and brain health. So almost 7 months ago, I completely went dipshit. I completely knocked myself out, went over a few kickers snowboarding, hit about a 15-footer, went straight in the air from 15 feet straight onto my head, knocked myself completely out, made myself much more stupid. You can't make myself much more ugly. So I was okay in that department, but son of a bitch, I had some serious concussion issues for a long time and some symptoms that were pretty scary. I was having short-term memory loss, headaches, just not being able to focus, not being myself, getting angry. And so I jumped on and I had a podcast about it. Dr. Robert Silverman's, Rob Gronkowski's chiropractor, it would be his protocol for supplement nutrition, concussion nutrition and concussion prevention and concussion regeneration. And that is curcumin, it's fish oil, it's vitamin D, it's creatine, and a few other things, PRP, that allows us to regenerate and make new neural pathways so that I can, 1, decrease the amount of symptoms, but 2, get back to normal or better than normal after the concussion. And I'm not saying that you get a concussion so that you can get better than you were before, but that's what the research is showing, and he has done it with Rob Gronkowski, who, the son of a bitch, has a peanut for a brain, but he's still playing. He's still winning championships. This guy has had so many injuries. I almost guarantee he's had more injuries than anybody in the NFL. And he's still pumping. So this Robert Silverman guy knows what the hell he's talking about. And so we went with his protocol. I've been able to meet the guy. He's a brainiac, and this is what he does for a living. So without any further ado, we get into creatine and brain health. And whoa, that's interesting. So I made some highlights here, but kind of the intro, because I'm not the guy that just skips to the end of research studies and looks at the conclusions like a bunch of dipshits. That's how you mishandle a bunch of research and data. So creatine, supplementation, and cognition. Differences between investigations including study populations, cognitive function tests, and supplement dosing and duration procedures, direct comparison. However, some conclusions can be made. Although controversial, creatine supplementation may positively influence some aspects of cognition in different experimental paradigms. Importantly, its effects seem more pronounced in stressful conditions such as hypoxia and sleep deprivation combined with exercise. Despite the suggestion that more complex or demanding cognitive processes are more prone to respond to supplementation as they are more energy demanding, inconsistencies regarding cognitive test response to supplementation hamper further conclusions. So what this is saying is that we need more data. However, the response for creatine is actually you're getting a better response in more stressful sleep deprivation situations combined with exercise. If that doesn't sound like athletics, I don't know what does. It sounds like high school wrestling. Little sleep, little food, high stress. This is how creatine can help that individual. And so, again, preface this with there needs to be more research done, but this is what they're showing in more high-stress situations. So, indeed, creatine has been shown effective in attaining the effects of decreasing the effects of sleep deprivation on throwing accuracy in rugby players. So this is a proven fact. We've been able to see an increase in throwing accuracy in rugby players that have sleep deprivation while taking creatine. So Borchi found improved performance in selected indexes of cognitive function after a time trial track test. Whoo, son of a bitch. A time trial track test in semi-professional mountain bikers supplemented with creatine. So this is where I was talking about anaerobic versus aerobic. And they've actually had studies showing that they found better cognitive function through creatine in a more aerobic sport of mountain biking. So allowing us to be sharper and quicker in a sleep-deprived and high-stress situation, such as mountain biking, through supplementation of creatine. Let me turn this son of a gun here this way. Whoa, there we go. Hopefully everybody can still see that. There we go. So then creatine supplementation has been shown able to improve cognition, communication, self-care, personality, and behavior, and reductions in headaches, dizziness, fatigue, and children with traumatic brain injuries. This is where we get into Dr. Robert Silverman's protocol. We're able to alleviate a lot of these issues through traumatic brain injuries through the supplementation of creatine. And this is where I'm going to end this study here in a second. This is much more than performance. Yes, it does play into performance. It plays into being sharper, being quicker, having better rate of force development, being sharper and quicker on our feet as we react. However, this is much bigger than that. This is when we do have these catastrophic injuries, such as TBIs. So collectively, despite limited data, creatine supplementation seems potentially beneficial in reducing severity of enhancing recovery from TBI, warranting further studies on its role not only as a post-injury therapy, but also as a neuroprotective agent in populations at high risk for TBIs. So there is a potential for creatine supplementation to improve cognitive processing, especially in conditions characterized by brain deficits, which could be induced by acute stressors, sleep, stress, exercise, or chronic pathology conditions such as creatine synthesis, enzymes deficiencies, TBIs, aging, Alzheimer's, all these different things, depression. So this just shows you that most importantly, we need more research done. However, what this research is showing as of today, not freaking 1980 that we're taking all these studies from, that we can have some cognitive benefit outside of the performance realm as it pertains to TBIs. So I found that was very interesting for you guys. This study was done, where did I see it here? 2021, published in Nutrients Journal. So there's that one for you guys. Then we get into what many people never even would have thought of, and it's creatine during pregnancy. So this is something that, on a more personal note, my wife had some health issues a few months back. And through that, we were able to really, really hone in on a supplement regimen that is going to be beneficial for her as we progress down that road. Luckily, we were able to mitigate all these issues, and she's very, very healthy now. However, this is something that further down the road as we start having children, building a family, that my wife will be on. It sounds crazy, like, yo, babe, I want you to get jacked, take creatine. No, I want you to have a healthy, badass baby, D1 material, weight room savage, so you're going to take creatine. That is where my head's at all the time. D1, baby. Just kidding. But Anyways, so creatine metabolism in female reproduction, pregnancy, and newborn health. This is some wild shit, ladies and gentlemen. Buckle your seatbelts because here we go. So 2021, this was published again in Nutrients Journal. So the introduction, just so you guys can kind of get a feel for what's going on here. So this is a meta-analysis, meaning a collection of other research studies and a conclusion off of that. So female reproductive organs are some of the most regenerative and highly energetic tissues within the body. As such, there is an undeniable link between energy metabolism and reproductive success. By understanding the intricacies of energy metabolism and adenosine triphosphate, ATP, production throughout the female reproduction, we are the best place to address irregularities that may contribute to infertility and poor pregnancy outcomes. So, as we go through this, just think about how high demanding creating a whole nother being on the body is. Our body is already amazing, but the things that women can do during this cycle are astronomical. And so we're looking at, just as we are in performance, optimizing a system. So to sustain high energy levels, cells, including those of our reproductive tissues, are equipped with high energy phosphagens. While we use a variety of different phosphagen systems, the creatine kinase circuit is the sole phosphagen system of higher vertebrates. So here, with pregnancy, so altered creatine metabolism has also been relinked to reduced fertility and specific pregnancy-related pathologies. However, there is no clear consensus as to whether creatine metabolism is indeed an essential component bioenergetics for successful reproduction. Again, this is showing us, one, most importantly, there needs to be more research done. However, altered or decreased levels of creatine and the metabolism of creatine has also been linked to reduced fertility and specific pregnancy-related issues. So it's not showing this as causation, but it's showing us a correlation between altered or decreased creatine metabolism in the reproductive system. So I had some more highlighted here. All right. So research explicitly examining human endometrial tissues reports that components of creatine metabolism are upregulated during this wow, I can't talk today. The secretory, oh my gosh, secretory phase of the menstrual cycle. During this phase, when embryo implantation can occur, endometrial tissue contains creatine and displays increased expressions of creatine transport genes, as well as an upregulation of systolic creatine kinase, gene expression, and enzyme activity. So when we're able to have an embryo implantation during this time, this tissue, this wall, does contain creatine. However, it is showing an increase in creatine kinase transport during this cycle. So all they're saying is that since there is an increased expression of creatine transport genes, that an increase of serum creatine could be beneficial. They're not saying it is. They're not saying this is causation, but they're saying with the increase of transport gene, a serum increase in creatine could be beneficial. Then we get into some of this stuff down here. So creatine metabolism in the human placenta. So optimal placental function is required to ensure both the successful maintenance of pregnancy as well as fetal growth and development. Consuming 40 to 60% of oxygen and glucose transported to the uterine cavity, this energy consumption serves two purposes: growth of the placenta itself and nutrient transfer, waste transport, and peptide and steroid hormone production for fetal growth development. So we have all seen the very, very gruesome images of fetuses or babies that had a decreased steroid hormones, that didn't get enough nutrients, that had a disruption in the nutrient transfer. And so this is showing that we're able to increase the ability to transport our nutrients, to get rid of waste, and to increase our steroid hormone production for the fetus through intake of creatine. And this just shows you how high stress and how high energy this cycle is. It also has been reported that the human placenta has the enzymatic machinery to synthesize creatine. So we're now looking into deep diving into the energy system of having the human placenta actually, how do I put this? We're now looking at, as the human placenta is generated, that it has the ability to use creatine as an energy system. I know I had a little bit more here. So, maternal creatine metabolism during pregnancy. As pregnancy progresses and the fetus grows, maternal metabolism shifts with several adaptations required to meet the changing metabolic demands of advancing gestation. As detailed in the review, the role of creatine metabolism in contributing to cellular bioenergetics during reproduction and pregnancy is becoming evident, with provisions of creatine being required to accommodate rapidly expanding tissue beds within the uterus, placenta, and fetus. One must also consider the source of the additional creatine required throughout the gestation to optimally meet these demands. So yes, we do need to have, and this is where I don't appreciate, and I get it, but I don't appreciate when pregnancy serves as an excuse to just go overboard, to completely eat ice cream every day, to just completely let yourself go. This shows that through this, it is becoming much more evident that the role of creatine is playing a massive role as we're trying to create new tissues, create the fetus, create all these different things as we are going through pregnancy. And so, yes, eating red meat, having a decent diet as we're pregnant is very important. On top of that, supplementing with our creatine can show to assist in the metabolic demands throughout this cycle. I think we're pretty close to the end here. So, fetal creatine metabolism and use of supplementary creatine to prevent perinatal brain injury. So the creatine kinase circuit is thought to play an essential role in energy homeostasis during embryonic development, particularly the development of the central nervous system. This idea was explored by Brieston in a study which described embryonic gene and protein expression. So what he showed is the importance of creatine metabolism for cellular bioenergetics in the fetal brain is further supported by a recent in utero fetal magnetic resonance spectroscopy. Wow. Study that clearly illustrated cerebral creatine with advancing gestation. This was examined with 204 spectra obtained from fetuses of 129 pregnant women and found fetal cerebral creatine concentrations more than doubled between 18 and 40 weeks gestation. So between that 18 and 40 weeks, the demand for creatine skyrocketed. And this is very important that we provide that for that. Then, in addition to creatine metabolism supporting the brain's basal metabolic functions, growth, and maturation, creatine can maintain ATP turnover, acid-base balance, and mitochondrial function. This, together with its antioxidants, vasodilators, and antioxidant properties, makes it a candidate for the treatment for brain injuries. This itself here, ladies and gentlemen, as it pertains to Alzheimer's, as it pertains to Parkinson's, Huntington's disease, it's very important that we can grasp that outside of the world that I'm in, that is very null and void, very small and very not important, we can see how important this is in one of the most important cycles in any life, in anybody's, the creation of a child. So very, very important, very, very cool. Like I said, 2021 in the Nutrients Journal. And then we got two more slides here, ladies and gents. Creatine in elderly patience. And I've talked about this ad nauseum in the past, and I find this very, very interesting. So a lot of this pertains to Alzheimer's and the degeneration of our neural pathways as we age. And so this was in 2021 out of Switzerland, and it's an open-sourced journal article. And the introduction of this is sarcopenia refers to age-related reductions in muscle strength, muscle mass, the quantity of muscle, and then the relative strength of that unit, okay, of that unit of muscle. Also, muscle quality, the architecture and composition of that muscle, and or physical performance. Sarcopenia typically occurs in 8 to 13% of adults greater than 60 years of age. So creatine, it just gives a very basic overview for you guys. I didn't give you like the definition, so here it is. I gave you my definition of it. Creatine is an organic acid synthesized from reactions involving an amino acid, arginine and glycine, in the kidneys and liver. Alternatively, creatine can be exogenously consumed from meat and commercially manufactured products, supplementation. The vast majority, 95% of creatine resides in skeletal muscle, like we talked about, with approximately 66% being stored as phosphocreatine. So 3 grams of exogenous creatine per day may help maintain creatine stores in the body. So this is a summary of studies examining creatine and resistance training on muscle outcomes in older adults. So Aguilar in 2013 had healthy women, a median age of over 65 years old, 5 grams a day of creatine, resistance training 3 times a week for a duration of 12 weeks. We're able to see an increase in serum creatine levels, gains in fat-free mass, fat-free muscle mass. Their 1RM bench press went up. Their knee extension and bicep curl compared to the placebo went up. This, yes, we can see some results. We can see some benefit out of this. But again, 65 years old, increasing the 1RM bench press. I'm not too worried about that. We're looking at overall health, but that's something that you can see the benefits of. So only 3 studies have determined the effects of creatine and resistance training in older adults. Again, this is a meta-analysis taking all these. So in 12 weeks of creatine, 5 grams a day, and supervised resistance training eliminated the probable and severe sarcopenia distinguishers in 3 participants. However, creatine had no effect on the individual with sarcopenia. Again, more research is needed. These preliminary results across studies suggest that creatine greater or equal to 5 grams per day in supervised resistance training for at least 12 weeks has potential to mitigate sarcopenia in older adults. People, it's much bigger than resistance training. I want you to handle that and look at that. This is much, much bigger than resistance training. This is something that you can take as you progress throughout life. So, potential of creatine supplementation for osteoporosis. Osteoporosis refers to age-related loss of bone and mineral density and architecture of that bone that increases bone fragility and increase the risk of fall and fractures. Again, 12 weeks of creatine with a loading phase for 5 days and then a maintenance phase, and supervised resistance training increased upper limb bone mineral density. I'll say that again. In 12 weeks with a loading and a maintenance phase of creatine, increased upper limb bone density. This is out of this world, people. This is something that you do not see in the performance realm because they're just trying to sell you a picture of frickin' Arnold Schwarzenegger on a bottle. Think about the stuff that this can change lives, okay? Again, more research is needed, however. So as we progress down here, I found some more interesting stuff here. So potential for creatine supplementation for physical fragility. Fraility is defined as the syndrome of psychological decline in later life, characterized by vulnerability to adverse health outcomes, hospitalization, falls, depression, social isolation, reduced quality of life. This is commonly defined according to the phenotype of physical frailty proposed by which consist of weakness, slowness, low levels of physical activity, shrinking, exhaustion, with one or more criteria. So then we get into the studies examining the creatine supplementation in cancer. And I made a video and I made a TikTok about this that I'm going to post up with this, as it allows our hunter T cells to be some bad motherfuckers and start taking on cancer cells, doing their deeds, taking them out, cutting them off at the knees, and getting after it. So this is very similar to what I was talking about with my wife, and why we had a very, very rigid protocol for that. So this is a very high dosage, and I've never heard of this high of dosage. And I was talking to Ben Skutnik over some social, and he's never heard of this high of dosage either. But for cancer context, it makes sense. So 20 grams per day for 7 days, and then 5 grams per day. Remember, I told you a loading phase of 5, then reduced to 3 to 5. This is 20 reducing to 5. Pretty crazy. So 20 grams per day for 7, and then 5 grams a day for the remainder of the 8 weeks. So there was an increase in weight in these cancer patients, an increase in bone mineral density, an increase in muscle mass, an increase in fat-free mass, and their ability to have higher energy as they progress through their day. So this is something that is very interesting as it pertains to these cancer patients. So the conclusions now. Sarcopenia refers to age-related reduction in muscle mass, strength, and or physical performance, and has negative effects on the ability to perform daily activities. So this is associated with sarcopenia, includes osteoporosis, sarcopenic obesity, being physically frail. And so resistance training and creatine has some favorable effects on aging muscle, bone and fat mass, muscle and bone strength, and physical performance, primarily in healthy populations. This, again, shows the wide-ranging effects that creatine can have as we progress onto the last thing, and that is creatine in performance. So this article here is very, very in-depth, and so I'm going to give you the quick and easy of it, and then we can go from there. So, I don't like this view. Hold on here. I like it here. I like it like that. Keep working that back. Y'all know how to act. Slow motion for me. All right. Creatine supplementation for athletes. This is out of the the NSCA journal, published in 2019, and this is an NSCA Coach, Volume 6, Issue 3, Creatine supplementation for athletes. So, I won't go over the basic science that it overviews in here. It goes through what is creatine, where's it stored, how to get it, and protocols for that. I'll skip all that as we've gone over it. So it has been found that ingesting creatine in supplement form increases whole body creatine to a greater extent than meat. And this was very interesting, like we talked about. Eating meat, like we always talk about, we want to have the nutritional benefit. However, increasing our creatine through supplementation increases whole body creatine to a greater extent than meat. Very, very interesting, as I did not know that before reading this. So, for athletic performance, what does the research say? Research shows that creatine supplementation can increase creatine content in muscles anywhere from 10 to 20% in meat eaters and 20 to 40% in such vegans and vegetarians. Enhanced muscle creatine stores can provide a benefit for all the athletes. When phosphocreatine, PCR, is converted into creatine, the energy released by breaking its high-energy bonds can be used to add phosphate groups to adenosine diphosphate, making it into ATP, thus forming adenosine triphosphate. Again, that can be used immediately for energy purposes. There's hundreds of studies that investigate this, but potential benefits inside the performance realm, people. This is my go-to. Lean muscle mass and improvements in body composition. 4 studies attached. Muscle and strength increases, 4 studies attached. Weightlifting performance and training volume, increasing the volume of our training, 3 studies attached. Growth factor and gene expression, 3 studies. Muscle fiber size, so increasing our hypertrophy response, 2 studies attached. Glycogen synthesis and storage capabilities, satellite cell numbers. So this is going back to our satellite cells and our Hunter T cells. Intramuscular and intracellular water, increasing the hydration of that cell. And a variety of sports-related field activities, increasing the performance of sprint performance. 3 studies attached. So this goes over the protocol that I talked about. They say 5 to 7 days of 5 grams, drop it down to 3 to 5, depending on your body weight in kilograms. Then supplementation for recovery. This is where things get dicey too, because we're always talking performance, but performance is recovery and recovery is performance. The faster we recover, the more we can train. The more we can train, the more we need to recover. So in addition to its role as an energy substrate, creatine has been shown to possess antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties and to reduce exercise-induced oxidative stress in the mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell. It's the first thing that comes to my mind. Freaking biology. Freaking WIPO, dude. WIPO from DSU gave me my only C on my entire college transcript. Biology 105 or whatever the shit it was. Pisses me off to this day. Only C I've ever had. So then we get into what it can do for our recovery. So this is where it's very interesting. So suppression of tumor growth, that's what we talked about with cancer and tumors. Very interesting there. But this increases our serum levels of creatine kinase and can help with the shuttling of lactic acid. This is where we get into recovery. The sooner that you're not sore, the sooner your muscles can recover, the better. Then, while limited, results demonstrating the anti-inflammatory effects from creatine supplementation have mainly been shown to exert its positive effects in response to aerobic exercise. Not anaerobic, aerobic exercise. Not on resistance training, but also could play a role on team sports. This is where I find it interesting, and I need to dive into that study because I've always thought of creatine as the anaerobic steroid. Okay, the best supplement for an anaerobic sport. I'm sure my buddy Ben Skutnik could dive into that and let me know more about that too. Goes over the loading phase. We don't need to go over all that. Then, creatine supplementation and glycogen restoration. It has been shown that creatine supplementation enhances glycogen synthesis and storage. Co-ingesting creatine through supplementation in meats with carbohydrates can help with the storage in the muscle. Ingesting creatine with carbohydrates and protein enhances muscle creatine uptake. It also promotes greater glycogen restoration post-training than just loading carbohydrates. So we used to, back in the day when I used to play ball, we played on Saturday nights or Saturday afternoons, we'd always load up on carbohydrates. Me and my buddy Sam, me and my buddy Sam at the time would go frickin' buck wild on some Sanfords, go get the frickin' big burger, had what was it called? I forgot what it was, but it had a chicken breast, a patty, bacon, smushed together, get some pasta with it, and we were frickin' hammering. So it's showing that it's actually more effective in restoring our glycogen than just carbo loading. So that's very important and very interesting there. Then this is something for my athletes that I had to deal with that I hope none of them have to deal with, but it's inevitable in sports, rehabilitation. So creatine can also provide a benefit to an athlete once they have cleared to start rehabilitation or they start return to play protocol. So it can be shown to reduce muscle tissue changes related to atrophy. So what's that saying is it's reducing the amount of atrophy that can happen after an injury. Increases glycogen content to a greater extent than placebo and increases rate of muscle growth and strength gains compared to placebo. So allowing us to get back to where we were before faster than what we would have during the placebo. My athletes, this is something that should be music to your ears, okay? It's not only on the performance side. It's not only on the recovery side. It's not only in the rehabilitation side. It's going to make you much smarter when you're 90. It's going to allow your baby mamas to have beautiful babies, have D1 athletes. Creatine can help with much more than performance. Most importantly, your baby mama's having D1 athletes, baby. Take this seriously. This thing is magic. Supplementation for cognition and brain function. As stated above, 90% of the total body creatine resides in muscle, with the remaining stored in the brain, in testes, and heart. About 5% of the total creatine is in the brain. Although the brain only accounts for just about 2% of the body mass, it is responsible for 20% of the basal metabolic rate. And brain creatine is essential for energy production, as is skeletal muscle. So creatine supplementation can influence the brain and cognitive processing. When used as a nootropic, creatine has been shown to improve cognition in a variety of different ways: memory, focus, attention, which can be useful for those seeking to optimize mental facilities. Think about reaction work. Think about coming out of the blocks. Think about set, hut, go. Think about these things where we have to react to a known or novel task. This can assist us when on an open loop environment. This is very important here. Then, increasing brain creatine through creatine supplementation may reduce or delay mental fatigue in the same regards as the muscular fatigue. Creatine supplementation may be very useful to athletes involved in tasks involving mental cognition and focus and learning that can lead to significant mental fatigue. Film study is one of the examples. Learning the playbook, especially when coupled with creatine. So then it goes into the protocol there. Then we get into sleep deprivation as we wrap this up here. So creatine may offset the negative cognitive effects of sleep deprivation. Obviously, I haven't slept much. A condition facing athletes of all ages due to intense schedules. It is crucial for athletes to maintain optimal cognitive function to navigate these challenges that they have continually face, and creatine supplementation may enhance or maintain cognition. Similarly, sleep deprivation and anxiety are common among student athletes during exam periods, a time when optimal cognitive function is paramount. As stated above, creatine supplementation is most likely, again, asterisk, most likely to exert its maximal ergonomic effect in times when cognition is stressed. High intensity, playoff games, big tennis match, state championship in wrestling, state championship in gymnastics. Creatine can be shown to increase your performance in those perspectives, but increase cognition when stressed. So the conclusion: days after presenting with a sports-related concussion, athletes have been shown to exhibit lower brain energy levels due to significant decreases in brain creatine. We already went over how this can affect concussions, and I've had a whole nother podcast on that, so I'm not going to waste time. So this, again, is probably one of my favorite studies. You can find this on the NSCA journal. Very, very, very informative creatine supplementation for athletes. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I am going to wrap this up, but please, I want you to realize that this is much more than performance. Yes, I am in the performance realm. I teach and I preach this all the time. But we do need more research. I'm not saying this is some miracle drug. However, a lot of this data is looking to and facing towards creatine having a much bigger footprint than what we originally thought. Again, I want to give the example. In the early 80s and 70s, we thought that smoking cigarettes were healthy. We had doctors recommending the doctor's choice for cigarettes. Nowadays, we know that that's not true. So I want you to try to flip your perspective. I want you to try to think about some of these statements that I've said today. Go look at the research, do your due diligence, but realize that this is much more than performance, and we can get these effects through pregnancy, elderly population, performance, cognition, concussions, much more things than just the performance side of the ball. So I appreciate you guys listening to this rant. Again, I'm going to say it again. Get going on your 20% discount on Nutridyne. Again, I am coming up on 100 people that have come to me talking, let's get this thing rolling. I love to help. Creatine is a lot of the times, if adequate sleep, water, and food, is one of the staples that we talk about, okay, along with fish oil or a probiotic, depending on your gut microbiome. So get going on that. If you're interested in that, let me know. Shoot me a DM on Instagram at Coach Wortman. And that is another episode of Next Level Radio, ladies and gentlemen. Leave us a review on iTunes. Leave me a freaking 1-star if you'd like. Just leave me something, okay? We're giving live shout-outs. We've got like 20 of them on there. Things are freaking rolling. I appreciate all you guys. You guys have a great week or weekend whenever you listen to this. And we will see you next week on Next Level Radio. Out.